From Mario battling it out with Pac-Man at the arcade, to a trivia game that had everyone chasing a piece of the pie, and of course, a riot-causing doll, these are some of the top-selling toys of the 80s. Some have now gone online, some are no longer around, and some are now worth serious bucks. The Rubik's Cube. Plenty of the top-selling toys from the 80s still fill store shelves or virtual online aisles today, with names like Lego, Star Wars, Transformers, My Little Pony, and Barbie still remaining relevant. But if you grew up in the 80s, one of the biggest sensations was as much fun for your brain as it was for your hands: the Rubik's Cube. Originally invented in Hungary in the mid-70s by its namesake creator, Erno Rubik, the toy-slash-puzzle didn't get licensed for international release until 1980, when it took the decade and the world by storm. The Rubik's Cube was a big enough pop culture hit that a motorized, giant-sized version was constructed and displayed at the 1982 World's Fair in Knoxville, Tennessee, standing 10 feet tall and tipping the scales at over 1,200 pounds of puzzle. Compare that to the recently revealed world's smallest Rubik's Cube, weighing just 0.3 grams, with each side measuring only 1.6 millimeters, or 0.06 inches across, making this puzzle 1,000th the size of the original. In the 80s, the cube was such a hit that it spawned books on how to solve the puzzle, merchandise, and even a cartoon series titled Rubik the Amazing Cube. And the fad continues today, with competitive speed cubing becoming a popular event. Believe it or not, the current record for the fastest time to solve the standard 3x3 cube is 3.13 seconds. Don't blink, because you just might miss it. Proving that the puzzle game's popularity was no fad, 50 years later, roughly 500 million units have been sold since its release. Star Wars figures. One of the more out-of-this-world hit toys of the 80s originated on the big screen in a galaxy far, far away. Star Wars action figures, based on the original trilogy, were so successful that they were still in production by Kenner until 1985, 2 years after the theatrical release of Return of the Jedi, the last movie of the original series. The Star Wars line sold close to 300 million units over its 80s run, and many of these original action figures are highly sought after by collectors today, with the most valuable going for tens and even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Kenner originally launched 12 figures in 1978, and by 1984, 79 Star Wars action figure characters had been released. And the most valuable one today? That would be a Boba Fett figure that was never actually released, after its missile-launching backpack was deemed a choking hazard. However, some of these did end up on the secondary market, and one recently sold for $1.3 million, not only making it the most expensive Star Wars figure ever sold, but the most expensive toy ever sold. Even today, when it comes to Star Wars toys, the force is strong. Cabbage Patch Kids. On the other side of the toy shelf, Cabbage Patch Kids debuted in 1982, while Barbie was already dominating her third decade on the market. One thing for sure, Barbie wasn't causing riots at the toy stores like the cute and cuddly Cabbage Patch Kids. Demand for these dolls became serious enough to cause a frenzy. Multiple riots at retailers during the 1983 holiday shopping season saw the news cycle filled with tales of swinging baseball bats, broken arms, and broken hearts, as customers clashed trying to get their hands on that year's holiday hit. Parents even tried to bribe store employees as a way to get their hands on one. So what was so special about these dolls? Well, Cabbage Patch Kids came with a birth certificate and adoption papers, which resonated with the kids of the day. So much so that the company sold over 3 million dolls by the end of 1983. The Cabbage Patch craze even inspired a spoof trading card series, the Garbage Pail Kids. While 80s kids loved them, they were discontinued before the end of the decade, partly due to a trademark issue. Liking this video so far? Then go ahead and smash that like button and hit subscribe if it's your first time here. Now, more 80s toys, games, and fun facts. Arcades and NES video games. Back in the 1980s, there were no smartphones to play Candy Crush, or tablets to play Angry Birds, or even an Xbox to play Fortnite. In the early 80s, it was all about going to the arcade. The arcade had 80s kids feeding quarters into large, stand-up cabinets with flashing displays, buttons, and joysticks, with some 24,000 arcades spread across the USA at its peak. But a flooded market and the introduction of better home gaming systems soon meant a crash. The prince of the arcade era was Pac-Man, but by 1985 he'd hand off the crown to Super Mario Bros. And the home-based console generation when the NES Nintendo Entertainment System hit American shores with a full-scale launch in 1986. Pac-Man and Mario are linked in other ways too, since the powerful plumber's first appearance has arcade roots in the cabinet version of the game Donkey Kong from 1981. Popular NES video games of the day included The Legend of Zelda, Punch-Out, and Duck Hunt. The original 8-bit NES sold over 60 million consoles, humbling competitors like Atari along the way. But by the end of the decade, gaming went from the arcade to the house to anywhere and everywhere with the release of the Nintendo Game Boy in 1989. The new handheld gaming unit was often bundled with the hit puzzle game Tetris, after Nintendo bought the rights a year earlier in 1988, giving us a large glimpse into the future of handheld mobile gaming. The 8-bit and 16-bit visuals of past years have given way to a high-definition experience that's come a long way from that annoying laughing dog in Duck Hunt. Game Night Evolution. Draw a card and roll the dice because it's time to sharpen up those old family game night reflexes. Classics like Monopoly, Clue, and Risk were still 80s game night favorites. But when it comes to board games that dominated the decade, there can be only one champion: Trivial Pursuit. Invented on a cold Canadian night in December 1979, the official release of the pie piece collecting pursuit hit the USA in 1981, just in time to run the table through to the 1990s. Possibly thanks to the trivia questions having to be updated on a regular basis in new releases, in addition to just being plain fun, Trivial Pursuit was the top-selling board game of the decade every year from 1981 to 1989. And just 5 years after it debuted, 20 million copies of the game had been sold by 1986. The hysteria even crossed into another hit market of the 1980s with an arcade version of Trivial Pursuit released in 1984. You can still play Trivial Pursuit electronically today, but with a non-joystick, hands-free digital version on Alexa's Skills called Trivial Pursuit Tap. Although unlike 1984, you have the advantage of checking Google for your answers. When it comes to board games today, the dice, cards, clues, and colored plastic pieces have given way to high-tech modern versions, like the app-based and Bluetooth-powered Pictionary Air that allows you to draw in the air and project it to a device's screen. While Monopoly has released hundreds of versions of physical games since the 1980s, it ventured into modern mobile gaming with the 2023 release of the Monopoly Go app. Collecting 80s toys and games. It's not just Stranger Things driving a surge in the 80s pop culture comeback. Plenty of OG franchises are still standing on their own merits. 80s icons like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Transformers are still dominant in the toy market, thanks to animated series and CGI-focused live-action films keeping them relevant in the 21st century. My Little Pony is still galloping along, buoyed by various TV series and a large following in the cosplay and convention circuit. And in this day and age, toys aren't just for kids. The collectability factor has made both retro and modern toys into sought-after items for adults as much as kids. And when it comes to collecting, some of the toys from the 80s are worth some big bucks. For example, Hasbro's Transformers hit the shelves in 1984, and kids couldn't get enough. And today's collectors can't either. In fact, a mint condition Generation 1 Optimus Prime can fetch over $2,000 at auction. After Mattel passed on making Star Wars figures, they released He-Man and the Masters of the Universe action figures following the launch of the animated series in 1983. The original He-Man action figure, complete with a battle axe and shield, is still a beloved item. Today, a pristine He-Man figure can sell for upward of $1,500. And when it comes to the original My Little Pony lineup, Firefly and Applejack were must-haves for any collection, and some of those original ponies in mint condition can sell for $500 or more today. The 1980s G.I. Joe reboot transformed the classic 12-inch figure into a smaller, more dynamic action figure. This line of toys included some wild vehicles and playsets, like the massive USS Flagg aircraft carrier, which was 7 feet long. Today, G.I. Joe fans and collectors hunt for mint figures, and some rare pieces from the 80s can get into the tens of thousands of dollars. Remember those Garbage Pail Kids trading cards we mentioned earlier? Well, characters like Atom Bomb and Leaky Lindsay became cult favorites. And today, a rare first series card can sell for $3,000 or more, proving that gross still equals gold. Talking Teddy Bear, Teddy Ruxpin, was the talk of the toy aisle in 1985 and 1986, with his cassette-based animatronics becoming a hot seller, big enough to spawn an animated series. The rudimentary tape and speaker system of storytelling that powered the original hit was modernized in a 2017 re-release which used built-in digital programming. While the OG version retailed for $59.99 in 1985, or around $174 adjusted for inflation today. If you had an original Teddy Ruxpin still in box, it could be worth as much as $800. Looks like no matter how cool any new toy tech is, collectors will still lay down the cash for an original classic. Whether it's a dusty arcade cabinet or a giant HD flat screen, the adventures of Mario and Pac-Man are a hit in any era. Whether you had to make your own sound effects and literally transform your Transformers by hand, or bought the 2024 Megatron for $1,200 with all the bells and whistles, it's the fun that still draws us in. Even if your board games are no longer played on an actual board, it's the interaction that really counts. So while there will always be a market for modern toys and games, some 80s greats are still in high demand even today. We've got plenty of great videos that you just might like, so stay right here to keep on watching. Thanks.